You guys saw the Mavic 3 comparison to the Air 2S at night. Beautiful. Gotta love this camera, especially what it does just in automatic settings. It's insane, right? At night. Fell in love with it, could not return it. The daytime comparison coming between the Air 2S and the Mavic 3 detail comparison, that's coming up for the daytime, so stay tuned for that if you're interested in seeing how these two footages stack up. But for today, we have the Evo 2 Pro compared to the Mavic 3 image quality, because at the end of the day, image is everything. That's the slogan the DJI says, right? Image is everything. So right now I've got Mavic 3 auto settings. It means everything is on auto. What can the camera produce straight out of camera? Now, this is good for beginners. If you're a beginner and you're buying this drone because you want the latest and greatest, this is what you're going to get in auto. This is the Hasselblad colors and color science, which looks very natural, straight out of camera. Everything looks good, not bad. And this is the Evo 2 Pro auto, straight out of camera as well. Stop it here for a second. The Hasselblad color science on the left definitely looks good. But me looking at these two images, to me, the Evo just looks a lot crisper and sharper with auto everything, just letting the camera do it. Now, why did DJI go with a 5.1K maximum resolution, which is 5120 by 2700, versus the Evo 2 Pro that has a 5.4K at 5472 by 3670? I don't know. That's why the image is a little bit smaller, because of the resolution. So yeah, all this is in a 4K timeline. So this is your side by side. Both look decent. I would say this comes down to preference. No zoom or anything applied. The left half is the Mavic, the right half is the Evo. Right off the bat, I can see here, I can see some writing here on the Evo. It's the detail is just not there in the Mavic for some reason. Not sure why. This whole image just looks a lot crisper and sharper side by side if you look at the two side by side. Even on the roof, right? You look here at the details on the roof at the bottom left where it says Wendy's on the Mavic versus the Evo. There's much more detail on the roof. Now in auto, I don't know what aperture it's selecting for the Mavic, and I don't know what aperture it's selecting for the Evo. So both in auto, just if you're a casual flyer, don't expect to get as much details as you will in the Evo. Sharpness is one thing, but as you can see, the detail I can see there, you will not be able to see there at all. So bear that into consideration if you're a casual user. Now it's zoom time, right? We have the Mavic 3 on 3x zoom, right? Straight out of camera, no sharpness or anything, just 3x zoom. It doesn't look bad, right? I mean, it's not something you'd actually shoot with, but this is the way you actually check resolution and detail and qualities, by punching. The Evo looks good too, it's sharp and everything. There's another view focused on the ground on the 3x zoom with the Mavic, and then on the Evo. Now, let's look at side by side. If you look at side by side here, you could see, look off in the distance here, this Evo image just looks a lot crisper. And it's not just sharpness, it just has more detail in it. And over here, it's kind of like, it's just not as detailed. You can see it in the image. Over here, the trees and everything here are a little bit more crispy here, starting to get a little blurry. This here, I would say, looks a bit over sharpened, right? I won't call that detail. Here, it's kind of getting blurry, and it's not far away from the camera. So let's let it run. There you go. Now let's look at side by side on the 3x zoom. Here we go. Now you look at things like this rooftop over here with the solar panel, you can see details there, right? That's not just sharpness. Like below the solar panels, you can actually see some details on this roof part over here at the bottom here. Whereas the Mavic, it's just washed out. Uh, One might say, look at the green rooftop out here. There's not much detail in that roof versus over here with the Evo. It's just nice and clean and crispy. Also, look at this part here, this little orange roof. You could see the ribs starting to show the detail of the ribs. That's not sharpness, that's just detail. You could see the markings on the roof over here. Whereas over here, it's just washed out, right? It's just completely washed out. So take that into consideration. But one is definitely 5.4K and one is 5.1. Both drones were in the exact same spot, about, I would say, give or take a minute apart from shooting. So the sun didn't move that much within a minute or two, right? So that's about as accurate as I can get. I don't know what type of glass. These companies don't say what type of glass they're using in their drones, and now it could even be plastic. Who knows? Well, more about that later. I don't know what the cameras are doing. Maybe just the auto settings for the Mavic is not ideal. And you need to take that into consideration if you're a beginner and you're buying a Mavic. Auto settings might not be the way you want to fly, right? So I don't even know if a beginner should be buying this drone, or someone who doesn't know a lot about cameras should be buying this drone. So here we go. Now we've turned it up a notch, right? So one thing you can do if you're going from beginner to intermediate is going to a mode called aperture priority. Aperture priority allows you to set your aperture in the camera, and everything else the software will do for you. It will select the ISO and it will select a shutter that it thinks is appropriate. So that's what I did for both cameras next. The Mavic, I didn't add any sharpness or anything, just dropped it in aperture priority, F4, and the same thing with the Evo. Because remember, when you have a bigger sensor, right? Bigger sensor at 2.8 is going to give you different results from a smaller sensor at 2.8. A smaller sensor at 2.8 will tend not to want to separate or blur, right? Or focus. It will be easier to focus on things, because even though 2.8 is a very fast stop, your sensor is still very small and it's not going to separate much. Even though they're both in the sky and it's hard to get separation from any drone in the sky, right? Regardless of what aperture you're at, it will can tend to make things look kind of out of focus. So I think selecting F4 here is a pretty sharp point for both cameras, and that should help to get rid of any blur that's causing the softness. Both cameras are supposed to get really sharp right now around F4 or F5. So let's start with F4. The Mavic looks good at F4. So if you're flying, the first thing you want to do is drop this in either F4, F5. We'll check that out. Do not fly this camera in auto, because you will be disappointed. But then the Evo also looks insanely sharp at F4 as well. Insanely sharp. So look at the two side by side. And the colors of preference. Actually, I actually prefer the Mavic colors over here. I just think the Evo's got too much brown in it. Just too much brown, and the Mavic has more realistic looking greens as we're on the colors. It's pretty evident here, right? But that can be adjusted. We want details and we can always adjust colors. Again, side by side, nothing, no detail on the signboard, right? Even at F4. Over here, we've got details on the signboard at F4, even more details, I think, than we had at 2.8. So damn, that Evo camera has got details. It would be interesting to know what the dynamic range is for this Evo camera. That would be really interesting. There you go. Now we jump to 5x zoom on both cameras, side by side as well, on the half and half screen. I'm starting to see some grain over here, and it's starting to gray out, and look how soft it is around here. No details here on this building, right? Let's look at the Evo on the 5x zoom. On the 5x zoom, there's details here. Look at that, buddy. There's details over there. And the sharpness is holding up. It is holding up. I don't know what they're doing on that camera, but it's holding up. There you go. It's just a lot. You look at the image. Just, I don't have to say. Just look at it side by side. It's just a lot cleaner of an image, right? Look here at the top of the roof on this building here. You could see the textures on the 5x zoom here. You've got nothing. You've got no detail. Nothing. Right? So even the 4x apertures, in my opinion, is not really helping the Mavic that much. So now we jump to aperture F5 to see maybe that's the sweet spot for it. And the Evo just keeps getting sharper and sharper. Now it's like kind of looking really, really over sharp as the aperture kind of hits its sweet spot on the Evo. This here is starting to look better at F5. It's looking good actually, right? The details are coming here. The Wendy's details are starting to show up more. Still not as much as this, right? But this ear is closer, you can say. But yeah, the back here is still crisp from front to back. Front of the camera, back of the camera. On this Evo, everything is crisp. Here's still soft. Here is kind of crisp, but not quite. The side by side is there. You can view it, see it. There again, we come to the signboard. F5 doesn't help the signboard over here. Still can't make out what's here. Over here, you can make out the writing and stuff a lot cleaner. So yeah, the aperture priorities at F5 is not really, it's helping, but it's not that much. I guess 5.1K, right? I'm not sure how much the Evo has in dynamic range, but the Mavic has 12 stops. And I don't know if that's the reason why we're not getting that much detail. And it could be another reason too. The Mavic camera is capturing a lot more. It's much wider. Good, so here we go now. I've sharpened the Mavic up. I've got it on f5 aperture, which seems to be the sweet spot. The image looks good. At the back here looks good. Front, everything under the Wendy's sign, everything looks good. Nice on the crisp, clean, no complaints. All right, the Evo f5, sharp as heck, probably a little over sharpened, right? And bear in mind, you can turn down the sharpness. Both images actually look good here. Evo probably just a little over sharp, but you can turn that down in camera if you don't like. But when you start to zoom, here's the 3x zoom. Here's a 3x zoom on the Evo 2. We're going to do the side by side and see if there's much difference. There you go. Both images actually look decent here. At glance, both images actually look decent. The Evo to me still looks a lot more dynamic range, but at least this is not mush, right? It's coming to life now. This has always been alive. So yeah, this still the little bit of mushy, but this is nice and clean and crisp. The rooftops here, details, yes, the details are out there. They're coming out now, but this here just looks like, yeah, there's not much detail here. Here looks a lot better. Yeah, but it's coming to life now. You could see the back here compared to over there. We're getting something more out of this camera, right? I'll tell you guys, I don't think this is a beginner's camera at all. This camera needs some experience for you to get the most out of it, right? Here's the F5 sharpened on the Mavic and the F5 on the Evo. I didn't do any sharpening to that. So here we go. We sharpened it up. We're starting to see the buildings come alive here, but still, you got a little bit more detail there. This looks like a 1 or something written there on this unit, unit 1. I can actually make that out. Where this just, even the unit at the back, you could see details all in the middle, the textured lines. You could see it nice and clean and crisp. In the middle here in the line, good luck making that out. Even at what are we at, F5? I don't think that's sharpness, buddy. That's dynamic range time. Side by side, look at it over here. You can't even make out the grills. This is not sharpness. You can apply as much sharp as you want. This image is just soft. It's lacking detail. Here on this 5.4K, look at this. You can make out the grills over here. I mean, you make one mistake with this Mavic on your settings and it'll be a nightmare for you in the editing room. And I had noticed this first when I was flying in the park and I flew the same route. And then I zoomed in on the Evo and the image was crystal clear. And then I zoomed in on the Mavic and it fell apart. They were both in auto. And I said to myself, well, the Evo was lower. So it was like 20 feet lower. So it captured more detail. And then my producer was like, no. Do it the right way. Let's put them right up in the air at the same time of day apart. And then is when you really see the difference. I have a comparison coming up between these two in the daytime. And boy, oh boy, there's some surprises there. So make sure you subscribe, hit the bell and stuff so you get notified when that drops. I'm taking my time with it. I still have time to return it and I can keep it. But these are my findings. Take it how you wish. I can't wait to see how the Evo 2 Pro and this stacks up at night. So make sure you give this video a huge thumbs up. Make sure you hit subscribe and hit the bell to get notified when more image comparisons come out, because image is everything, as DJI says. With that being said, I will catch you guys whenever I can. Make sure you become a Patreon, guys. Big benefits to Patreon. Get direct access to me. Any questions? I'm right here on Patreon. Support this channel, and there's benefits. Last Mini 2 went all the way to the UK.